This is my official incident report to the Vorath Commercial Syndicate Regulatory Review Board, filed under Compliance Case 9 Verk, and I will tell it plainly, because I have been asked to be plain, and because there is no version of this story in which I come out looking better by dressing it up. I am Dreveth Sewell. I am, or was, pending the board's determination, Director of Broadcast Compliance, Verk Station, Orbital Division. I have held that position for 19 years. In that time, I have approved 1,247 commercial broadcast packages for syndicate distribution. I have never before summoned a warship. The campaign was called the Verk Consumer Launch, and it was, by every metric we use to measure such things, a masterpiece. I say this not to diminish what followed, but to be accurate. Sen Dral, our lead signal architect, spent 11 months on the compression modulation alone. The idea was simple: reach every receiver in 6 sectors simultaneously. Every frequency, every band, every channel that a modern receiver might be scanning. The signal would be impossible to miss. That was the point. Sen called it saturation presence. I called it the best campaign the syndicate had produced in a decade. I signed the release form on a morning when the light through the compliance office windows was very clear, and I was feeling, I will admit, rather proud of us. The broadcast launched at 600 station time on the 4th of the month. By 11:40, Earth's corvette Unbroken Claws had dropped out of transit at the edge of Vorath space. I did not know this immediately. The first I heard of it was when my junior analyst, a young woman named Petha Wren, appeared in my office doorway holding a routing notification and wearing an expression I had not seen on her face before. She had been working in compliance for 3 years and had never looked uncertain about anything. She looked uncertain now. "Director," she said, "there's a ship." I told her there were many ships. Vorath space saw considerable traffic. "This one hailed us," she said, "directly on the emergency channel." The Unbroken Claws was not large. I pulled the registry entry later, a survey corvette, one of Earth's mid-range patrol hulls, the kind of ship that runs the edges of map space doing quiet work. Armed, yes. All of Earth's survey vessels are armed, which I had previously regarded as a bureaucratic quirk and now regarded differently. It had a crew of 11. Its captain was a woman named Sira Voss, and when Peth patched the channel through to my console, Captain Voss was already mid-sentence. "Responding to a Priority 7 distress pattern logged by Relay Station Firen 2 at 6:08 this morning," she said. Her voice was level, the way a voice is level when the person using it has had reason to practice being level. "We were the nearest asset. I have the pattern on record if your station requires confirmation of receipt. Can you tell me the nature of your emergency?" I sat with that question for a moment that I estimate was about 4 seconds, but felt considerably longer. Then I pulled up Sen Dral's technical specification for the Verk campaign compression modulation, the 11 months of work, the saturation presence architecture, the urgency pulse timing that gave the signal its punch, and I compared it against the emergency protocol standard that Peth had already, very quietly, called up on the secondary console beside mine. She had seen it before I had. That is why she had looked uncertain. The match was not approximate. It was, in the language of signal analysis, a near-identical cadence. The repetition interval, the compression ratio, the urgency modulation frequency that Sen had specifically engineered to make the consumer signal feel pressing, impossible to ignore, demanding of immediate attention. It had felt pressing and impossible to ignore and demanding of immediate attention to Earth's Relay Station Firen 2, which had been passively scanning those frequencies for the better part of 4,000 years, and which had heard the pattern it was built to hear, and had done exactly what it was built to do. It had forwarded the contact to the nearest available vessel. The nearest available vessel had come. "Captain Voss," I said, "I want to be completely honest with you, because I think honesty is the correct approach here, and also because I cannot think of a version of this conversation that ends well if I am not honest. There is no emergency. A pause, not a long one. No emergency, she said. No emergency. What your relay received was a commercial broadcast, a consumer product launch for the Voreth home market. It was engineered to achieve saturation presence across all available frequencies, and the compression modulation, the urgency timing specifically, appears to have been inadvertently calibrated to a pattern consistent with a human distress protocol. I am looking at the technical specifications as we speak, and I can tell you that this is not something we did intentionally, and also that I signed the release form myself, and therefore I am not going to attempt to distribute responsibility. Another pause, longer this time. You broadcast an advertisement, Captain Voss said, on every available frequency, and it sounded like a distress call. Yes. To every receiver in 6 sectors. That was the intention, yes. The distress call resemblance was not. I heard something on the channel that might have been the captain's chair shifting, or perhaps it was one of her crew. It was a small sound. What was the product? Voss asked. I looked at the campaign documentation on my screen. The Werk consumer launch, 11 months of compression modulation, saturation presence. Home water reclamation units, I said. Residential grade, very efficient. There is a promotional period running through the end of the month. There was a silence that lasted long enough that I began composing, in the back of my mind, the opening lines of my resignation from the syndicate. Then Captain Voss made the small sound again, and I realized it was not her chair. She was laughing, not loudly. The way a person laughs when they are in the middle of something that is not funny but is also, from a certain angle, very funny indeed. Director Sewell, she said when she had finished, I am going to log this as a navigation incident, probable distress signal, origin confirmed non-emergency on arrival. That keeps your station off the formal distress response record and keeps my transit time off my captain's log as a wasted run. Does that work for you? I said that it worked for me very much. Good. I'm also going to leave a crate of emergency rations at your docking bay. Standard protocol when we arrive at a distress coordinate, we log what we offloaded. I told her that was not necessary. Director, she said, and her voice had gone level again, the practice kind. We came a long way. Let me leave something. I authorized the docking. The unbroken claws spent 40 minutes at Werk Station's secondary bay. I watched the camera feed from my console while I began drafting what would become this report. Captain Voss did not disembark. 2 crew members brought the crate out, standard emergency rations, human specification, sealed for long-term storage, and set it beside the bay door and went back aboard. The corvette undocked cleanly and was in transit within the hour. Before she closed the channel, Captain Voss said one more thing. She said, tell your signal architect the modulation work was very good. We would not have come this far for a sloppy signal. I have included that in this report because the board asked for a complete account, and that was part of it, and because I think Sen Drow deserves to hear it even if the circumstances are not the circumstances any of us would have chosen. The Werk consumer launch has been suspended pending regulatory review. The compression modulation has been flagged for modification. The promotional period has been extended by 3 weeks to compensate for lost broadcast time, and I am told this was not my call to make, which is fair. The crate of emergency rations is still in Bay 7. We are not sure what to do with it. Human specification food is not something Werk Station keeps a protocol for. Petha Wren looked up the contents and reports that it includes, among other things, something called a meal bar, something called an electrolyte packet, and a sealed tin labeled coffee. She has not opened the tin. Neither have I find, for reasons I have not fully examined, that I am reluctant to. I did not aim the signal at Earth. Earth was not on our distribution list, or rather, Earth was on our distribution list in the way that every receiver in 6 sectors was on our distribution list. which is to say we were not thinking about Earth specifically. We were not thinking about Earth at all. We were thinking about saturation presence. Earth's relay was 4,000 years old, and it was thinking about distress patterns. I will note for the record that the unbroken clause logged an arrival time of 5 hours and 40 minutes from the moment relay station Firen 2 forwarded the contact. I have reviewed the transit distance. 5 hours and 40 minutes is fast. I am told, by people who understand transit mechanics better than I do, that it is very fast. We were not in distress. Captain Voss came anyway at speed, and confirmed we were not in distress and left food, and filed it as a navigation incident so that neither of our organizations would have to answer for it in public. She told me the signal was good. I am resigning from the position of Director of Broadcast Compliance, effective upon the board's determination of this case, because that is the correct thing to do, and I have always tried to do the correct thing. But I want the board to understand that I do not regret the campaign. I regret the modulation error. I regret the 11 crew members of the Unbroken Clause who spent nearly 6 hours in transit to answer a water reclamation advertisement. I do not regret that they came. I think, in some way, I am not entirely able to articulate in the language of a compliance report that it is worth knowing they would. The tin of coffee is in Bay 7. I think we will keep it there for a while.